History is not just a list of dates and kings. It is a collection of strange, silent objects that refuse to tell their stories easily. We are about to examine 35 ancient relics that tell tales so bizarre, they challenge the very foundations of what we believe about our past. By the end, you will possess a new perspective on human history, one filled with unexplained genius and enduring mysteries. We will encounter a 2,000-year-old device considered the world's first computer and a medieval manuscript written in a language no one can read. What do these objects know that we have forgotten? What hidden truth about our ancestors is waiting to be rediscovered? Are you ready to question everything you thought you knew? Buried beneath the sea for 2,000 years, a corroded lump of bronze and wood held a secret that would rewrite history. This is the Antikythera mechanism, recovered from an ancient shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera in the early 20th century. At first glance, it was just another artifact, encrusted and broken, but decades of careful study, including advanced X-ray imaging, revealed its true nature. Inside that calcified shell was a masterpiece of engineering, a clockwork universe made of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears. This was not a simple ornament. It was a precise mechanical calculator designed to track the complex motions of the sun, the moon, and the planets. By turning a hand crank, an ancient user could predict lunar phases, solar eclipses, and even the dates of major athletic games like the Olympics. The craftsmanship is staggering, with gears cut so precisely they could model the irregular orbit of the moon, a fact astronomers did not mathematically describe until the 1600s. So who could have possibly built such a device around 100 years before the Common Era? The leading theory points to the great minds of the Hellenistic world, perhaps inspired by the legendary workshop of Archimedes in Syracuse. But no writings from the time describe anything like it. The mechanism stands alone, a singular artifact of genius that implies a whole school of advanced mechanical science that has otherwise vanished without a trace. Its very existence forces us to ask a haunting question. If this level of sophisticated technology was achievable then, what other profound understandings did the ancient world possess that were simply lost to the depths of time or to the silence of the centuries? While the Antikythera mechanism represents a mystery of forgotten science, another relic presents a puzzle of unreadable language. The Voynich manuscript is a book that actively defies understanding. Created in the early 15th century, this illustrated codex is written entirely in an unknown script, using an unknown language from start to finish. Its 240 vellum pages are a riot of strange and beautiful imagery. You will find drawings of plants that do not exist on Earth, their roots and leaves arranged in impossible configurations. There are intricate astronomical charts showing unfamiliar constellations and celestial spheres. Perhaps most curiously, there are sections filled with nude female figures, often depicted bathing in or connected by networks of elaborate green tubes and pools. The entire book is a coherent, flowing document, yet its message is utterly sealed. For over a century, the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and historians have tried to crack its code. Military codebreakers from both world wars, armed with techniques that deciphered enemy communications, turned their skills to the Voynich and walked away completely baffled. What makes the manuscript so uniquely frustrating is the internal consistency of its text. Statistical analysis shows it follows complex linguistic rules with word and sentence structure that mirrors a genuine language. It is not random gibberish. This has led many to believe it is a real, encoded text, not a medieval hoax. Yet every proposed key, every supposed translation has collapsed under scrutiny. In recent years, artificial intelligence has been brought to bear on the problem. While some AI models have suggested links to Hebrew or other languages, these findings are hotly debated and have not yielded a readable translation. The most compelling theory, and perhaps the most haunting, is that the Voynich manuscript represents a complete linguistic dead end. It could be the sole surviving example of a constructed language or a cipher so personal to its author that the key died with them. It sits in a library at Yale University, a beautiful, maddening artifact that whispers a story no one alive can hear. It challenges a fundamental human impulse, the desire to understand the written word, and leaves us staring at a page full of answers we cannot comprehend. The frustration of an unreadable book gives way to a different kind of puzzle, one not of language but of potential energy. In the archives of the National Museum of Iraq sits a small, unassuming clay jar about the size of a man's fist. Found in the 1930s near Baghdad, this artifact from Mesopotamia, dating somewhere between 250 years before the Common Era and 650 years after, is far more than a simple pot. Inside, a copper cylinder was carefully soldered with a lead and tin alloy, and within that cylinder was suspended an iron rod. The jar's opening was sealed with an asphalt plug, which also insulated the iron rod from the copper. To any modern eye, the assembly is eerily familiar. When an archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig first examined it, he proposed a startling idea. If you filled this jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, the electrochemical reaction between the dissimilar metals and the electrolyte would generate a small but measurable electric voltage. In essence, this object, now known as the Baghdad battery, could produce about 1 volt of electricity. The immediate question is obvious and electrifying. What on earth was it for? The mainstream archaeological view is cautious. It could have been a sacred vessel for storing religious scrolls, with the iron and copper components merely serving as protective casings. The asphalt seal would have kept out moisture, a logical feature for preservation, but the experimental evidence is compelling. Replicas built to the exact specifications do indeed generate a current. Furthermore, from the same time period and region, we have examples of fine jewelry and artifacts that appear to be electroplated with a thin layer of gold, a process that requires an electric current. Could ancient artisans have connected several of these jars in a series to create a stronger battery, dipping their items into a gold solution and using this primitive voltaic pile to bind the metal? The implications, if true, are profound. It suggests a flicker of practical electrical knowledge, a technology that appears in the historical record as a single, curious anomaly, and then vanishes for over 1,000 years until the work of Alessandro Volta in the 18th century. We are left to wonder if this was a forgotten invention, a chance discovery that was never fully understood or developed beyond a niche craft. Did someone 2 millennia ago witness the mysterious tingle of this current and harness it for a purpose we can only guess at? A purpose that faded into obscurity, leaving behind only a silent, potent jar. From the silent potential of ancient electricity, we move to a relic that seems to defy gravity itself. In a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt, from around 200 years before the Common Era, archaeologists found a small object carved from sycamore wood. At first glance, it was catalogued simply as a figurine of a bird, but this was no ordinary bird. Its design features a sleek, tapered fuselage, 2 distinct wings that are flat on the bottom and rounded on top for lift, and a tail that stands perfectly vertical, not horizontal like a bird's tail feathers, but exactly like the vertical stabilizer on the tail of a modern airplane. This artifact, now known as the Saqqara bird, looks less like a creature of nature and more like a carefully engineered model of a glider. The immediate and obvious question is one of intent. What was this object meant to be? The mainstream and most accepted explanation is that it represents a ceremonial falcon, perhaps a child's toy or a weather vane. Yet its aerodynamic proportions are uncanny. In the 1990s, a model aircraft builder named Martin Gregory constructed a precise, scaled-up replica of the Saqqara bird for wind tunnel testing. Without adding any modern modifications, he found the object possessed inherently stable flight characteristics. With a small weight added to its nose for balance, the replica glided smoothly and efficiently. It was, by all technical definitions, a functional glider. This does not mean the ancient Egyptians had airports or piloted aircraft, but it does raise a fascinating possibility. Could an artisan, through keen observation of birds in flight and perhaps centuries of crafting wooden toys, have accidentally stumbled upon principles of aerodynamics? The shape of a wing that creates lift, the need for a vertical stabilizer to prevent spinning, these are not intuitive concepts. They are the result of experimentation and understanding. The Saqqara bird stands as a provocative outlier. It suggests that the spark of discovery, the process of trial and error that leads to technological leaps, may have flickered in unexpected places. Was this object a one-off curiosity, a toy that just happened to be perfectly shaped for flight? Or does it hint at a lost thread of practical investigation, where someone, long before the Wright brothers, carved a piece of wood that caught the wind just right and soared, if only for a moment, into the unknown? A glider carved from wood challenges our timeline of discovery, but a hammer found in stone threatens to shatter it completely. In 1936, near the town of London, Texas, a couple walking along a creek bed made an astonishing find. Protruding from a broken chunk of solid rock was what appeared to be a modern carpenter's hammer. The tool itself, once freed, was about 6 inches long, with a wooden handle that was partially petrified and an iron head that showed clear signs of being forged. The extraordinary part was not the hammer, but its context. The rock that had encased it completely was identified as a Cretaceous period sandstone, a formation reliably dated by geologists to be well over 100 million years old. The immediate implication, if taken at face value, is staggering. It would mean that a human or some other intelligent being capable of forging iron and crafting a handle was present in North America during the age of the dinosaurs. This artifact, known as the London Hammer or the London Artifact, has become a cornerstone of creationist and alternative history arguments, presented as definitive proof that mainstream science has its timelines completely wrong. The narrative is powerful and simple. How could a man-made object be inside a rock that formed before humans existed? The scientific explanation, however, lies in a fascinating and common geological process called concretion. Concretions form when mineral cement precipitates and hardens around a nucleus within sedimentary layers. That nucleus can be anything: a fossil, a shell, a pebble, or in this case, a lost hammer. Over time, as the surrounding softer rock erodes away, the extremely hard concretion is left behind, giving the perfect illusion that the object inside is as old as the geological layer itself. Geologists point out that the specific mineral composition of the rock around the hammer, rich in iron and other elements, is classic for a concretion that formed relatively quickly in more recent times, perhaps only a few centuries ago, around the iron tool itself. The wooden handle's partial petrification can occur in a matter of decades under the right mineral-rich conditions. So the hammer is not a relic from the Cretaceous, but a perfectly ordinary tool from the 19th century that became the heart of a stone nodule. Yet, its enduring appeal in popular debate reveals a deeper tension. The London Hammer is less about the object itself and more about the human desire to find a single, simple artifact that overturns everything. It represents the ultimate outlier, the ultimate exception that, if true, would force a complete rewriting of history. That is why it persists, a humble tool trapped not in ancient stone, but in an eternal argument between established evidence and the thrilling possibility of being proven wrong. The desire for a single artifact to rewrite history is a powerful force, and nowhere is that more evident than in the strange saga of the Dropa stones. This story begins in 1938, when a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pute reportedly led an expedition into the remote Bayon Kara Ula Mountains near the border with Tibet. There, in a series of high mountain caves, they made a bizarre discovery. The caves contained neat rows of ancient graves, holding the remains of small, slender skeletons with unusually large skulls. But the real mystery was scattered across the cave floor, hundreds of stone discs, each about 9 inches across with a perfectly round hole in the center. They looked like primitive records or stone gears. According to the legend, these discs, later called the Dropa stones, were inscribed with a continuous spiral of tiny, barely visible hieroglyphic characters. The story claims that decades later, in the 1960s, a scientist named Nui finally managed to translate the script. The translation told an astonishing tale. It described a group of beings called the Dropa whose spacecraft crashed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. Stranded and unable to repair their ship, they tried to make peace with the local mountain tribes but were met with fear and hostility. This narrative, if true, would be the most direct evidence of ancient extraterrestrial contact ever found. It is a compelling, detailed story that has been repeated in countless books, documentaries, and online forums, becoming a foundational pillar of ancient astronaut theory. The problem, and this is where the mystery truly lies, is that there is no verifiable evidence any of it actually happened. No major archaeological journals recorded Kai Pute's expedition. The supposed translator, Nui, is not a verifiable historical figure in Chinese academia. Most damningly, not a single one of the hundreds of alleged stone discs has ever been displayed in a reputable museum or subjected to independent, peer-reviewed analysis. The entire narrative appears to have been constructed from a mixture of sources, including a 1962 article in a German magazine about UFOs, and a separate, real archaeological discovery of small stone discs used as fishing weights or spindle whorls in the region. The Dropa stones represent something different from the physical puzzles we have seen before. They are a modern myth born in the 20th century, a perfect storm of mysterious location, unusual skeletal remains, and an irresistible narrative of ancient visitors. They highlight a crucial distinction in the study of the past, the line between a genuine, evidence-based archaeological mystery and a story we wish were true. The real relic here is not a stone disc, but the enduring human fascination with the idea that we are not alone, and that proof of it is waiting just out of reach in a forgotten mountain cave. That line between genuine mystery and modern myth is a fine one, and it is drawn directly across a sheet of parchment from 1513. In the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul rests a fragment of a world map drawn on gazelle skin by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. Only about 1/3 of the original survives, showing the Atlantic Ocean, the western coasts of Africa and Europe, and the eastern coast of the Americas. Its detail is remarkable for its time, but one feature in the far south has ignited a firestorm of controversy for decades. At the bottom of the map, below the coast of South America, lies a landmass with a distinct, jagged coastline. Piri Reis himself wrote notes on the map, stating he compiled it from many source charts, including some that he described as dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. To many researchers, that southern land bears an uncanny, almost precise resemblance to the coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially sighted by European explorers for another 300 years. The most extraordinary claim is that the map shows this coastline not as it appears today, buried under thousands of feet of ice, but as it would look if it were ice-free, as it might have been thousands of years ago. The implication is staggering. It suggests that Piri Reis had access to ancient source maps, perhaps salvaged from the legendary Library of Alexandria, or passed down from a seafaring civilization with knowledge of the entire globe from an age when Antarctica was temperate. This theory proposes a complete rewriting of human prehistory, where advanced cartographers mapped the world in deep antiquity, and fragments of their knowledge survived just long enough to be copied by a Turkish admiral in the 16th century. The skeptical view, however, offers a far more grounded yet still fascinating explanation. Mainstream cartographers and historians point out that the map is riddled with errors typical of its period. The Caribbean islands are distorted and the scale is inconsistent. They argue that the controversial southern land is not Antarctica at all, but a speculative, mangled representation of the southern coastline of South America, a region still largely unexplored by Europeans in 1513. On the Peary Rise map, this land appears to connect to South America, which Antarctica does not. Scholars suggest it could be a composite of rumored lands, perhaps the coast of Patagonia merged with the speculative Great Southern Continent that cartographers had hypothesized since ancient times. The notes from Peary Rise about ancient sources, while romantic, are seen as a common practice of the era to lend authority to one's work, not necessarily a verifiable statement of fact. So the map becomes a perfect battleground for interpretation. Is it a miraculous relic preserving impossible geographical knowledge, a literal snapshot of a lost epoch? Or is it a beautiful, ambitious, but ultimately flawed product of its time, where guesswork, rumor, and fragments of real data merged into a compelling illusion? The truth may lie in the eye of the beholder, but the enduring power of the Peary Rise map is undeniable. It forces us to confront how easily we can see what we want to see in the faded lines of history, and how a single piece of parchment can hold two completely different worlds, one of forgotten explorers and one of human error, both equally compelling in their own right. A map invites interpretation, but some relics are so vast they defy it from the ground entirely. Stretching across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines are a gallery of giants. For over 1,000 years, from roughly 500 years before the Common Era to 500 years after, a culture we call the Nazca people created these immense geoglyphs by removing the dark, sun-baked top layer of pebbles to reveal the lighter earth beneath. They etched hundreds of figures into the desert floor, from a hummingbird with wings spanning over 200 feet to a spider, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, and even a humanoid figure often called the astronaut. The sheer scale is the first mystery. These designs are so enormous that their forms become coherent only when viewed from a significant height, a perspective the Nazca people presumably never had. So why create art you cannot see? The most accepted theories are grounded in the harsh reality of the desert. Water was and is the most precious resource. Some researchers propose the lines were part of a vast astronomical calendar, aligning with solstices or constellations to mark seasonal cycles crucial for agriculture and water management. Others see them as ritual pathways walked by priests during ceremonies to plead with deities for life-giving water. The very act of walking the lines a form of prayer etched permanently into the landscape. The lines could point toward distant mountains where water originated, serving as sacred maps of a hydrological faith. Then there is the theory that has captured the popular imagination for decades, the idea that these were landing strips or signals for ancient astronauts. Proponents point to the need for an aerial view and the strange, runway-like appearance of some long, straight geometric lines. While this idea is dismissed by mainstream archaeology, its persistence speaks to the profound sense of wonder these lines evoke. They seem to demand an explanation as monumental as they are, and just when we thought we had mapped them all, technology has deepened the enigma. In recent years, archaeologists using drones and satellite imagery have discovered hundreds of previously unknown lines and figures in the surrounding hills and valleys. Many of these newly found geoglyphs are older, created by the Paracas and Topara cultures, and they depict warriors and other human-like forms. This suggests the practice was more widespread and evolved over centuries, a long-standing tradition of making marks on the earth for reasons that were profoundly important, yet remain just out of our grasp. The Nazca lines are not a single relic to be placed in a museum case. They are the museum itself, an entire landscape transformed into a message. We can walk between the lines, measure them, and chart their alignments, but we are still standing on the page, unable to read the full story written in stones and sand. The desert lines of Nazca are a message written across the earth, but one relic is a message imprinted upon fabric. The Shroud of Turin is a length of linen, approximately 14 feet long, that bears the haunting, faint, sepia-toned image of a man who appears to have suffered crucifixion. The figure shows wounds consistent with the biblical account of Jesus of Nazareth, including scourge marks, a puncture in the side, and bloodstains around the head that could correspond to a crown of thorns. For centuries, it has been venerated by many as the actual burial shroud of Christ, making it perhaps the most studied and debated artifact in the world. Its known history begins in the 1350s in Liège, France, but its journey before that is shrouded in legend and gaps. The central scientific controversy erupted in 1988 when 3 independent laboratories performed radiocarbon dating on a small sample from the shroud's edge. Their results, published with great fanfare, dated the linen to between 1260 and 1390. This placed its origin firmly in the medieval period, seemingly proving it was a clever forgery. Case closed, or so it seemed, yet the shroud refused to yield to a simple explanation. The radiocarbon dating itself became a battlefield. Critics argued the sample taken was from a medieval repair, a section rewoven into the original cloth after a fire in the 1500s that damaged the shroud, potentially contaminating the test. They point to chemical analyses suggesting the cloth has a much older flax composition and to pollen grains found on it that originate from plants native to 1st century Palestine. The debate over the date is a perfect microcosm of the entire mystery, a clash between a single, powerful scientific datum and a mountain of anomalous, contradictory evidence. But the true, enduring enigma is the image itself. How was it made? The coloration is not a paint, dye, or stain. It exists only on the very topmost microfibers of the thread, a superficial change that has never been successfully replicated in all its complexity. The image has 3-dimensional information encoded within it, meaning that when the varying intensity of the stain is translated into topographic relief, it produces a perfectly coherent sculptural human form. This is not something a simple contact imprint or painted forgery could achieve. Over the years, hypotheses have ranged from the ingenious to the miraculous. Some propose a medieval artist used a primitive form of photography involving a camera obscura and light-sensitive chemicals, centuries before such technology was understood. Others suggest a natural chemical reaction, perhaps from gases emitted by a corpse, created a vaporograph. For believers, it remains a divine signature, a moment of transcendent energy leaving its mark. The Shroud of Turin, therefore, is more than a piece of cloth. It is a mirror. We look at it and see reflected back our own frameworks of belief, our trust in science, our hunger for proof, and our fascination with a mystery that sits precisely at the intersection of faith and empirical inquiry. It asks us not just how the image got there, but why, after all this time, we still cannot look away. The Shroud of Turin presents an image we cannot explain, but some relics present a story we desperately want to believe. The crystal skulls are objects of breathtaking beauty and profound deception. Carved from a single block of clear or milky quartz, the most famous of these, like the Mitchell-Hedges skull discovered in Belize in the 1920s, are masterpieces of lapidary art. With its detachable jaw and eerily lifelike features, it seems to gaze from a timeless past. The legends that grew around these skulls are the stuff of pure adventure. They were said to be ancient Mesoamerican relics, perhaps from the Maya or Aztec, imbued with psychic powers capable of healing, foretelling the future, or storing the knowledge of lost civilizations like Atlantis. They were described as being thousands of years old, their perfect polish and impossible craftsmanship a testament to a forgotten high technology. This narrative, promoted by figures like the adventurer Frederick Mitchell Hedges, captured the public imagination, blending archaeology with the occult and fueling countless books and films. The romantic fiction, however, began to crumble under the cold light of modern science. In the 1990s and 2000s, detailed examinations using scanning electron microscopes revealed the truth. The surfaces of the most celebrated skulls, including the Mitchell-Hedges specimen, showed microscopic tool marks that were perfectly consistent with high-speed rotary wheels and polishing compounds developed in the 19th century. Ancient Mesoamerican artisans, for all their skill, worked with hand-powered drills and abrasive sands. They could not have produced the flawless, symmetrical curves and deep, precise undercuts seen on these skulls with the tools available to them. The evidence points overwhelmingly to a more recent, if still impressive, origin. These exquisite objects are almost certainly fakes created in Europe, likely in Germany during the late 1800s. This was a period of intense fascination with pre-Columbian cultures, fueled by new discoveries and a booming market for exotic antiquities. Skilled gem cutters, using newly developed industrial lapidary equipment, crafted these wonders to feed the demand, selling them to collectors and museums as genuine treasures of a mysterious past. So why do they still fascinate us if they are frauds? Their story is compelling precisely because it is a story about storytelling. The crystal skulls represent our own capacity for wonder, our desire to connect with a mystical, more intelligent antiquity. They are mirrors reflecting our longing for magic in the past. Their perfect, cold beauty is undeniable, and the myths they spawned have taken on a life of their own, becoming cultural relics more powerful than the quartz they are carved from. They remind us that sometimes the most enduring mystery is not how an artifact was made, but why we wanted it to be true in the first place. Buried for its own protection lies a 5,000-year-old canvas of cryptic symbols. The Kochno stone, a massive sandstone slab rediscovered in Scotland in 2015, is one of the most spectacular and baffling examples of Neolithic art in the world. Measuring over 40 feet across, its surface is a dense tapestry of swirling, intricate carvings. You will see dozens of deep, round hollows known as cup marks, many surrounded by concentric rings that seem to ripple outward like stones dropped in water. Connecting these are winding grooves, ladder-like patterns, and mysterious geometric shapes, all pecked into the rock by stone tools over countless hours of labor. These cup and ring marks are not unique to this site. You can find similar, smaller examples scattered across ancient Britain and Ireland, even as far as Spain and Portugal. They are a shared visual language of the Neolithic world, a language whose grammar we have completely lost, but the Kochno stone is the masterpiece. Its scale is monumental, its design breathtakingly complex, a symphony of symbols carved into the living rock. So what was its purpose? The theories are as varied as the patterns themselves. Some archaeologists propose it was a celestial map, with the cups and rings charting the positions of stars or the phases of the moon, a massive astronomical calendar underfoot. Others see it as a sacred boundary marker, a portal to the spirit world where rituals for the dead or ceremonies for the ancestors were performed. The spirals could represent a journey into the underworld or the cyclical nature of life and death. There is even a fascinating suggestion that the patterns are meant to be seen in the flickering light of a fire or under the low sun of a solstice, creating shifting shadows that would make the symbols appear to move and dance. The stone does not give up its secrets, it simply sits, or rather, it no longer sits in view. After its careful excavation and documentation, archaeologists made a difficult but necessary decision. To protect the fragile carvings from modern vandalism and weathering, they reburied the entire slab under several feet of earth. This act adds a profound, modern layer to the mystery. The Kochno stone is now a hidden relic twice over, first by the passage of millennia and now by deliberate, protective hands. It exists today as a memory in photographs and scans, a ghost of a message from a people who invested immense effort to speak to the future. only for us to gently cover their words back up, preserving the question for another generation to perhaps one day answer. We know where it is, we have recorded its every line, yet we have returned it to the dark, an ancient puzzle respectfully sealed away, waiting. A hidden stone canvas speaks in a forgotten language, but a single copper coin whispers a different kind of secret. In 1957, on a coastal archaeological site in Maine known as the Goddard Site, a man named Guy Melgren was sifting through soil. What he found was a small, worn disc no bigger than a thumbnail. After cleaning, it revealed itself to be a silver coin, but not one minted by any colonial power. Experts identified it as a Norse penny, a piece of currency struck in Norway between 1065 and 1080 during the reign of King Olafkir. The Goddard site was a bustling trade hub for the Native American Wabanaki people, active from roughly 800 to 1300, a place where goods from as far away as the Great Lakes and Labrador were exchanged. So how did a medieval Norwegian coin end up buried in the soil of pre-Columbian Maine? The discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological community, for it seemed to offer tantalizing proof that Viking explorers had ventured far south of their sole-confirmed settlement at Ants Orks Meadows in Newfoundland. The logical narrative is irresistible. Norse sagas speak of expeditions to a land they called Vinland, a region of wild grapes and timber. Ants Orks Meadows was a base camp, a way station. It is entirely plausible that bold explorers, hungry for new resources or trade, sailed their longships down the coast, perhaps reaching the rich fishing grounds and sheltered bays of New England. The Maine penny could be a lost piece of pocket change from one such voyage, dropped during a trade encounter with the local Wabanaki, a tangible thread connecting two worlds centuries before Columbus. Yet the story is not so simple. The coin is an extreme outlier. No other definitive Norse artifacts like tools, weapons, or structural remains have ever been found anywhere along the northeastern American coast south of Newfoundland. This makes the penny a lonely piece of evidence. The alternative explanation is one of astonishing distance, but through indigenous hands, not Viking ones. The Wabanaki at the Goddard site were part of a vast, continent-spanning trade network. Goods traveled thousands of miles from their point of origin through a relay system of barter and exchange. A Norse coin brought to Labrador or Newfoundland by Vikings could have been acquired by indigenous traders there. It would then become a curious object, a piece of exotic material, not currency, but valued for its metal or its novelty. Over generations, through countless trades, it could have journeyed south, hopping from group to group, until it finally came to rest in Maine, over 1,000 miles from its possible point of entry. This theory turns the coin from proof of direct contact into a testament to the incredible reach and connectivity of Native American economies. The penny is a paradox. It is genuine and its context seems secure, yet it stands alone. It fuels the big questions because it fits perfectly into two equally plausible narratives. One paints a picture of intrepid Norsemen sailing into unknown waters, their presence fleeting but real. The other reveals a pre-Columbian America already deeply interconnected, where an object from a Scandinavian mint could cross an ocean and then a continent without its original owners ever taking a single step beyond their coastal camp. The Maine penny does not give us an answer. Instead, it holds two histories in its thin copper form and challenges us to decide which journey, by dragon ship or by a long chain of curious hands, is the more remarkable. A single coin can travel the world through trade, but a stone carving can only speak from where it stands. Deep within the crypt of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, Egypt, a series of intricate stone reliefs cover the walls. One panel in particular has become the center of a modern storm. It shows a large, bulb-like object, elongated and rounded at one end. Inside this bulb, a snake stretches its body in a wavy line, its head pointing toward the narrower end. This serpent is held by a standing figure of a god. The bulb itself is connected by what looks like a thick cable to a box resting on a pillar, and beside this, a baboon god holds two knives toward the snake. To a modern eye, the resemblance is startling and immediate. It looks like a giant, ancient light bulb with the snake as the glowing filament, the box as a power source or battery, and the cable as an electrical wire. The baboon with knives could be a warning about the danger of the current. This interpretation, known as the Dendera light theory, suggests the ancient Egyptians possessed and used electric lighting, perhaps to illuminate the deep, windowless interiors of their temples and tombs, explaining the lack of soot from torches in some chambers. It is a compelling image of advanced, lost technology. Mainstream Egyptology, however, interprets the scene through a completely different lens, one of mythology and consistent symbolic language. In this view, the bulb is not a bulb but a depiction of a lotus flower, a powerful symbol of creation and rebirth in Egyptian belief. The snake emerging from it is the serpent god Harsamtus, representing the life force coming into being. The pillar is a jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and the box is a representation of the primordial mound from which all life arose. The baboon is likely the god Thoth or a form of Horus, and the knives are for protection, warding off chaos. This is not an isolated, strange image. It fits seamlessly into a larger narrative tableau in the crypt about the nightly journey of the sun god through the underworld and his rebirth at dawn. Every element has a documented mythological counterpart found in hundreds of other Egyptian reliefs. The debate, therefore, is not really about the carving itself, but about how we choose to see it. Do we project our modern technological framework onto an ancient culture, interpreting their art as literal diagrams of machines they never described in any text? Or do we immerse ourselves in their own rich, symbolic worldview, where objects represent concepts, not gadgets? The Dendera relief continues to spark such heated debate because it sits at the perfect crossroads. It is just ambiguous enough to our modern eyes to suggest a tantalizing possibility, yet just specific enough within its own context to have a well-established alternative explanation. It challenges us to ask whether we are discovering a forgotten truth about the past or simply seeing our own reflection in the polished stone. The debate between ancient symbols and modern interpretations finds a stark parallel in a monument that was never meant to be ancient at all. In 1980, in a remote field in Elbert County, Georgia, a set of massive granite slabs appeared. They were not carved by a forgotten civilization, but commissioned in the modern era by a man who gave a false name. He called himself R.C. Christian, a pseudonym he said was meant to honor the ideals of the original Rosicrucian thinkers. For a fee of an undisclosed amount, he hired a local granite company to build what became known as the Georgia Guidestones. The monument consisted of 4 towering stones, each 16 feet high, arranged around a central pillar and capped by a massive stone table. Etched into these slabs was a message, a set of 10 guidelines for humanity, carved in 8 of the world's most prominent languages. The first guideline set the tone, reading, "Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature." Others called for guiding reproduction wisely, unifying humanity with a new living language and resolving disputes through a world court. The stones were also a precise astronomical instrument, with holes and slots aligned to track the sun's solstices and equinoxes, and a channel pointing to the North Star. From the moment they were unveiled, they were a magnet for controversy. To some, they were a thoughtful, if stark, blueprint for a sustainable future after a potential global catastrophe. To many others, particularly in the surrounding community and among conspiracy theorists, they were something far more sinister. The call for a drastically reduced global population, from billions down to 500 million, was seen as a genocidal mandate from a shadowy global elite. The Guidestones were labeled satanic, a monument for a new world order, a modern Stonehenge built for dark and secretive purposes. The anonymity of R.C. Christian, and the refusal of the local banker who handled the trust to ever reveal his true identity fueled decades of speculation. Was he a wealthy eccentric, a member of a secret society, or a front for a larger group with a chilling agenda? The mystery only deepened in the early hours of July 6, 2022. A security camera captured the moment an explosion ripped through one of the massive granite slabs, toppling it. Later that day, for safety reasons, the remaining stones were completely demolished by the county. Authorities arrested a man who claimed he was acting to expose a satanic globalist conspiracy. The destruction did not erase the guide stones from history. It amplified their legend. Now the physical object is gone, leaving only the photographs, the translated text, and the unanswered questions. Were they a warning, a prophecy, or a provocation? The Georgia Guidestones stand, or rather stood, as a uniquely modern relic. They were not a puzzle from the distant past, but a deliberate message planted in our own time, from a source we cannot identify, advocating for a future many find terrifying. Their power lies in that ambiguity, forcing us to confront not what ancient people believed, but what a mysterious contemporary thinker wanted us to remember long after he and his stones were gone. The deliberate mystery of the Georgia Guidestones gives way to a natural one, carved in granite by a culture that left no written records. Deep in the lush river deltas of southern Costa Rica, workers clearing land for banana plantations in the 1930s uncovered something utterly unexpected. Protruding from the ancient soil were dozens and eventually hundreds of stone spheres. They ranged in size from small balls a few inches across to colossal orbs over 6 feet in diameter, weighing more than 15 tons. Their most astonishing feature was their precision. Many were near-perfect spheres, crafted from hard granite or gabbro with a smoothness and symmetry that seems almost machined. These are the stone spheres of Costa Rica, created by the pre-Columbian Diquis culture over a span of more than 1,000 years, starting around 300 years after the Common Era. The immediate, overwhelming question is how they were made. The Diquis people had no metal tools, no wheels, and no draft animals. Archaeologists believe the process was one of immense patience and collective effort. First, a large boulder was selected. Using other, harder stones as hammers, workers would peck away at the surface, gradually roughing out a spherical shape. Then, over what was likely generations for the largest spheres, they would painstakingly grind the surface smooth using sand and water as an abrasive, perhaps with leather or wooden tools. The final polishing could have taken years, resulting in that mesmerizing, almost liquid smoothness. But the why is an even greater puzzle than the how. What purpose did these colossal investments of labor serve? When they were first discovered, many spheres were found arranged in geometric patterns, often in lines or triangles, leading some to propose they were astronomical markers aligned with celestial bodies or solstice events. Others saw them as symbols of power and status, the larger spheres denoting the importance of a chief or a clan, placed near dwellings or burial sites. Some researchers suggest the arrangements might have represented constellations important to the Diquis worldview, a map of the heavens laid at their feet. Tragically, we may never know for certain. In the initial frenzy of discovery, treasure hunters, believing the spheres might contain gold, dynamited many of them, finding only solid stone. Dozens more were rolled away by bulldozers, taken as lawn ornaments for government buildings, wealthy homes, and even fruit company offices, completely removed from their original settings. This destruction erased the sphere's archaeological context forever. The patterns were broken, the relationships between the orbs and other structures were lost. Today, many spheres sit in parks or town squares, isolated and silent, their original stories severed. They remain a powerful testament to human ingenuity and a profound cautionary tale. We are left with beautiful, enigmatic objects, masterpieces of patience and skill, whose true meaning was scattered and buried not by time, but by our own reckless curiosity. The silent, perfect spheres of Costa Rica represent a mystery of form and purpose, but other relics present a mystery of form itself. From the same region that gave us the Baghdad Battery comes a set of artifacts that defy conventional depiction. At ancient Ubaid culture sites in Iraq, dating from around 5,500 to 4,000 years before the Common Era, archaeologists have unearthed a collection of haunting terracotta figurines. They are humanoid but distinctly, unsettlingly not human. Their heads are elongated and conical, their eyes are large, slitted almonds that seem to stare from a distant world. Their faces taper to a point, and their bodies often possess subtle, lizard-like characteristics. Some hold infants with the same reptilian features, while others are depicted in what appear to be poses of worship or ritual. To the modern imagination, fueled by science fiction and conspiracy lore, the connection is instantaneous. These are the Ubaid lizardmen, presented by some as clear evidence of ancient alien visitation or the worship of reptilian deities who once walked among early humans. The narrative is powerful, suggesting that our ancestors were not creating gods from their imagination, but were recording the actual appearance of otherworldly visitors who influenced the dawn of civilization. Yet, to understand these figurines, we must step out of our modern context and into theirs. The Ubaid culture was a precursor to the great Sumerian civilization, a people mastering irrigation, building the first temples, and laying the foundations of urban life. Their world was intimately tied to the marshy, fertile deltas of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, an environment teeming with reptiles. Snakes and lizards were powerful symbols of regeneration, danger, and the primordial forces of nature. In this light, the figurines make profound sense as expressions of a spiritual worldview. They likely represent shamanistic rituals where a spiritual leader would take on the attributes of an animal spirit to commune with the other world, or they may be stylized depictions of gods or protective deities. The elongation of the head could symbolize wisdom, a stretched consciousness, or even reflect the practice of cranial binding, a known ritual in some ancient cultures to denote status. The large, almond-shaped eyes are a common feature in Mesopotamian art, meant to convey the all-seeing, vigilant nature of the divine. So why do we so readily leap to the extraterrestrial explanation? The answer lies in a cognitive gap. We have lost the cultural cipher to decode their symbolic language. When we see a humanoid with a conical head and slitted eyes, we no longer think of a shaman channeling the power of the marsh or a god of the watery abyss. We think of a gray alien from a UFO report. The Ubaid figurines hold up a mirror to our own times, revealing how we project our contemporary myths and anxieties onto the silent artifacts of the past. They are a Rorschach test in clay. Do we see evidence of visitors from the stars, or do we see the brilliant, symbolic artistry of early humans trying to give form to the powerful, non-human forces that govern their fragile world? The truth is likely earthbound, but the enduring fascination with these lizardmen proves that some mysteries are compelling not because of what they tell us about the past, but because of what they reveal about our own need for the fantastic. The desire to see our own reflection in the ancient world often leads us to strange places and sometimes to a farmer's field in Minnesota. In 1898, a Swedish immigrant named Olof Oman was clearing land on his farm near the town of Kensington. As he and his son uprooted a tree, they found its roots tightly wrapped around a flat, rectangular slab of greywacke stone. When they pulled it free and brushed off the dirt, they saw it was covered in strange, carved characters. Oman, recognizing them as runes, brought the stone to the attention of a local scholar. The inscription, written in a form of Old Norse, told a harrowing tale. It stated that 8 Goths or Swedes and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland to the west had made camp nearby. The text went on. We had camped by 2 skerries 1 day's journey north from this stone. We were out fishing one day. When we came home, we found 10 men red with blood and dead. a VM save us from evil. It concluded with a date, the year 1362. If genuine, the Kensington runestone would be a historical bombshell, proving that Norse explorers, centuries after Leif Erikson, not only reached the Midwest but left a dated record of their tragic expedition. The story it tells is a gripping one of adventure and sudden, violent disaster, a Viking Age footnote written on American soil. The immediate reaction from the academic establishment, however, was swift and dismissive. Linguists and runologists pointed out glaring problems. The runic alphabet used was an odd mixture, containing forms that were centuries out of date alongside others that were suspiciously modern. The language itself contained words and grammatical constructions that experts argued were not consistent with 14th century Old Norse, but rather reflected a 19th century Scandinavian dialect. The carving, they said, was too fresh, showing little of the deep weathering one would expect from over 500 years in the ground. The prevailing verdict was that it was a clever, sentimental hoax, likely carved by Oman himself or other Scandinavian immigrants longing to plant a deep, historical root for their community in the New World. Yet the stone refused to be so easily buried by skepticism. Proponents of its authenticity fought back with their own evidence. They argued that the stone's weathering was consistent with its age, noting the mineral deposits within the carved grooves. They pointed to other finds in the region, like a purported Norse battle axe and a mooring stone, suggesting a pattern. Most compellingly, they highlighted the sheer obscurity of some of the runic forms in the 1890s, forms that were not widely published or understood at the time, making it unlikely a simple farmer could have forged them with such knowledge. The debate became, and remains, a perfect stalemate between hard science and cultural longing. For generations of Scandinavian Americans, the Kensington runestone transcended academic debate. It became a powerful symbol of identity, a tangible link proving their ancestors were not just latecomers to America, but some of its very first European explorers. It sits today in a museum in Alexandria, Minnesota, less an archaeological artifact and more a cultural relic. It represents the profound human need to belong to a place, to inscribe our story onto the landscape itself. Whether it is a medieval message from doomed explorers or a beautiful 19th century myth carved in stone, its true power lies in the story we choose to believe and the past we wish to claim as our own. While the Kensington runestone is a debate of authenticity, the Phaistos disc is a mystery of pure, undisputed existence. Unearthed in 1908 in the ruins of the Minoan Palace of Phaistos on the island of Crete, this small, fired clay disc is a perfect storm of enigmas. It dates to around 1700 years before the Common Era, a time when the Minoan civilization was at its height. Both sides of the disc are covered in a continuous spiral of strange, stamped symbols, 241 impressions in total, representing 45 distinct pictorial signs. You can see a walking man, a plumed headdress, a ship, a shield, and a bewildering array of abstract marks. These symbols are not carved or painted. They were pressed into the soft clay with individual stamps, a technique that makes the Phaistos disc utterly unique in the ancient world. This was a form of movable type printing, a technology that would not be seen again for over 3,000 years until the invention of the printing press. The very method of its creation screams of systematic, repeated communication. Someone went to the immense trouble of creating a full set of reusable type to stamp this specific message. So what urgent or important information required such a sophisticated, pre-planned method? The disc's loneliness is its greatest puzzle. Not a single other example of this script has ever been found anywhere in Crete or beyond. We have no bilingual text to compare it to, no Rosetta Stone to provide a key. Without more examples, decipherment becomes a game of infinite possibilities. Over the decades, countless attempts have been made to crack its code. Some scholars believe it is a syllabic script where each symbol represents a sound. perhaps an early form of the later linear A or linear B scripts found on Crete. Others argue it is a purely ideographic text where each picture represents a whole word or concept, maybe a hymn to a goddess, a set of magical incantations, or a legal treaty. There are even more creative theories. Could it be a geometric puzzle or an ancient board game? Its spiral a path for pieces to follow. The stamp technique might support this as if it were a mass-produced set of rules. Or was it a diplomatic passport, a clay credential carried by an ambassador from a distant land? Its strange symbols acting as a safe conduct pass recognized only by a select few. Every proposed translation crumbles under the weight of its own speculation. The disk resists all efforts because it is a closed system, a message with only one copy, severed from its cultural context. It sits in the Heraclean Archaeological Museum, a silent, circular argument. It represents a moment of brilliant innovation, a flash of a system that was either too advanced for its time or so specialized that it died with its one intended reader. We are left staring at a beautiful, frustrating artifact that proves one thing absolutely: someone 3,700 years ago had something very specific to say, and they went to extraordinary lengths to make sure it lasted. They succeeded, but the meaning they so carefully preserved is the one thing time has erased. A single spark plug can ignite more than just an engine. In 1961, 3 rockhounds searching for geodes near Olancha, California, cracked open what seemed like a promising specimen. Inside the hard, rounded nodule, they did not find the expected crystal cavity. Instead, they discovered a ceramic cylinder surrounding a 2mm metal shaft, all held within a hexagonal metallic casing. To the finders, it looked unmistakably like a modern spark plug, yet it was completely encased in a solid lump of hardened clay and pebbles. The discoverers took it to a geologist who reportedly examined the surrounding rock matrix and declared it to be a genuine geode, with the inner artifact potentially 500,000 years old based on the strata it came from. The story exploded into popular culture as the Koso artifact, hailed as the ultimate out-of-place artifact, or OOP art. Here was a piece of 20th century technology, seemingly sealed inside a mineral formation that predated modern humans by hundreds of millennia. The implications were universe-shaking. Was it proof of a lost advanced civilization, or even visitors from another time or planet, leaving behind a piece of their machinery? The narrative was perfect for those seeking to dismantle conventional timelines. However, as with many such mysteries, a closer inspection revealed a more earthly, if still fascinating, explanation. In the late 1990s, investigators from the Skeptical Inquirer magazine tracked down the actual artifact and had it professionally examined. X-ray images showed the internal components in perfect detail. It was not a mysterious, ancient device. It was definitively identified as a 1920s-era Champion brand spark plug, the type commonly used in Ford Model T and Model A automobiles. The ceramic insulator, the central electrode, the threaded hex body all matched perfectly. So how did a 1920s spark plug get inside something that looked like an ancient geode? The answer lies not in geology, but in a common industrial process. The geode was not a natural geological formation at all. It was a concretion of hardened rust known as an iron oxide nodule. When the spark plug was lost or discarded on the ground, perhaps near a mine or desert track, it began to corrode. In the presence of mineral-rich water, a hard shell of iron oxide, calcium carbonate, and cemented sand can form around a metal object with surprising speed, sometimes within decades. This process creates a convincing rind that can look, to the untrained eye, exactly like an ancient stone. The Koso artifact stands today as a classic case study in the world of anomalous finds. It demonstrates how a combination of genuine mistaken identity, a compelling narrative, and the initial lack of thorough analysis can create a mystery that seems to defy all logic. Its ultimate identification does not rob it of value. Instead, it teaches a crucial lesson about the human elements of discovery. Our desire to find the extraordinary can sometimes lead us to see ancient miracles in the mundane remnants of our own recent past, a reminder that the most challenging timeline to unravel is often the short, messy history of the story itself. A spark plug trapped in rust reveals how easily we can misread the past, but one manuscript wears its sinister reputation openly on its page. The Codex Gigas, known more commonly as the Devil's Bible, is a book of staggering physical presence. Created in the early 13th century at the Benedictine monastery of Podlages in Bohemia, it is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world. Its pages, made from the skins of over 160 donkeys, measure 3 feet in length and nearly 20 inches wide. The book itself is almost 9 inches thick and weighs a staggering 165 pounds, requiring 2 people to lift it. This was not a book to be carried, but an anchor of knowledge, a monumental testament to faith and endurance. Yet, its most famous feature is not its size, but a chilling, full-page illustration on page 290. There, in vivid red, blue, and yellow, sits the devil himself. He is a monstrous figure, alone in a barren landscape with claws, a green face, and 2 small red horns staring out from the parchment with an unsettling intensity. This single image birthed the legend that defines the book. The story goes that a monk, condemned to be walled up alive for breaking his sacred vows, promised to create a book containing all human knowledge in a single night to atone for his sin. As midnight approached and the impossible task loomed, he prayed not to God but to the fallen angel Lucifer, offering his soul in exchange for completion. The devil finished the manuscript, and the monk, in gratitude, added the portrait of his infernal helper. It is a perfect medieval morality tale about ambition, despair, and the price of forbidden knowledge. The reality of its creation, however, speaks to a different, almost superhuman dedication. Analysis of the ink and handwriting suggests the entire manuscript was indeed the work of a single scribe. To complete such a colossal text, which includes the complete Latin Vulgate Bible, the works of Josephus, medical texts by Hippocrates, a chronicle of Bohemia, and various exorcism formulas, would have required an estimated 20 to 30 years of continuous solitary labor. The scribe would have had to prepare the vellum, rule the lines, mix the inks, and copy every character with unwavering consistency, likely working in a scriptorium for 10 hours a day, every day for decades. This was a lifetime project, so why include such a terrifying image of the devil in a holy book? In the medieval worldview, the depiction of evil served a vital purpose. It was a visual warning, a reminder of the constant battle between good and evil and the eternal consequences of sin. The devil's portrait was not necessarily an act of reverence but of confrontation. By placing him opposite a depiction of the heavenly city, the manuscript presented the ultimate choice to its reader. The Codex Gigas is a profound contradiction bound in leather and vellum. It is a work of immense pious scholarship born from a legend of diabolical pact. It represents both the pinnacle of monastic devotion and the enduring human fascination with the shadow that lingers at the edge of faith. It asks us whether the true marvel is the myth of a single night's work or the undeniable, decades-long reality of one person's unimaginable commitment to creating a world of words. The immense weight of the Devil's Bible is a testament to one person's lifetime of labor, but a far smaller stone, light enough to hold in your hand, has carried the weight of an entire historical controversy for nearly 2 centuries. In 1838, as crews excavated the massive Grave Creek mound in what is now West Virginia, a discovery was made deep within. Among the skeletons and funerary objects was a small, flat disc of sandstone about 1.5 inches across. On one side, it bore a series of roughly carved characters. To the excavators and many early antiquarians, these markings were clearly writing, but writing of a kind no one could read. The characters did not look Native American. Instead, to scholars of the time, they appeared to resemble a jumbled mixture of ancient alphabets from across the ocean. Some saw letters akin to ancient Iberian scripts from Spain. Others identified forms similar to Libyan or early Greek. The implication was explosive. If this stone was genuine and contemporary with the mound, which was built by the Adena culture between 200 years before the Common Era and 200 years after, it meant that someone from the Old World, someone literate in a Mediterranean script, had been present in the heart of North America centuries before Columbus. It would be tangible, undeniable proof of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact, a message left in a burial mound. The Grave Creek stone instantly became a rallying point for those who believed in lost voyages and forgotten colonies. The problem, however, is that the stone emerged at the absolute peak of what historians call the mound builder myth. In the early 1800s, many white settlers and antiquarians could not, or would not, believe that the complex, monumental earthworks dotting the American landscape were built by the ancestors of contemporary Native American tribes. They invented a fantasy of a lost, more civilized race, often imagined as Vikings, Phoenicians, or one of the lost tribes of Israel, who built the mounds and then mysteriously vanished. This created a feverish climate where any unusual find was seized upon as proof of this romantic, alternative history. The Grave Creek stone fit the narrative perfectly. Yet, from the beginning, its provenance was murky. It was not found by a professional archaeologist under controlled conditions, but by unpaid laborers during a haphazard excavation funded by the mound's owner, who charged the public admission to see the dig. The exact location and layer where it was found were poorly documented. Almost immediately, prominent philologists and archaeologists denounced it as a forgery. They pointed out that the inscription seemed to be a pastiche, a collection of characters copied from available books on ancient alphabets, some of them even printed upside down or backwards relative to each other, suggesting the carver was not fluent in any of the scripts but was merely imitating shapes. The stone itself has since been lost, surviving only in drawings and casts, which makes modern reanalysis impossible. For mainstream archaeology, the Grave Creek stone is a classic example of a problematic artifact. It emerged from a context of financial speculation and cultural bias, with no clear chain of evidence to support its antiquity. It is considered a probable hoax, perhaps created by a worker seeking attention or by the site's promoter to generate more publicity and paying visitors. But its legacy endures. The stone represents an entire category of controversial finds, from the Bat Creek stone to the Newark Holy stones that share a similar pattern. They are often discovered in the 19th century, often with unclear context, and their inscriptions seem to offer a simple, world-changing narrative that aligns with the discoverer's desires rather than the broader archaeological record. These objects force us to confront a difficult question. Are we uncovering genuine, puzzling evidence that challenges the mainstream story, or are we witnessing the birth of a modern myth carved in stone to fill the gaps in our own understanding? The Grave Creek stone, whether ancient message or clever fake, remains a powerful symbol of our enduring need to inscribe a familiar history onto an unfamiliar landscape. Buried beside the bones of an ancient giant, a small metal wedge seemed utterly out of place. In 1974, on the banks of the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, construction workers digging a trench uncovered a strange object about 35 feet down. It rested in a layer of sand and clay alongside the fossilized remains of a mastodon, a prehistoric elephant-like creature that went extinct around 11,000 years ago. The object itself was wedge-shaped, about 8 inches long, with 2 perfectly round holes drilled through it. When cleaned, it revealed a dull, gray metallic sheen. A preliminary analysis was confusing, so samples were sent to two separate laboratories in Switzerland and Romania. Their findings were identical and astonishing. The object was composed of an alloy of aluminum, approximately 90% aluminum, with traces of copper, zinc, lead, and other metals. This was not a natural nugget of pure aluminum, which is incredibly rare. This was a manufactured alloy, a deliberate mix of metals engineered for strength and durability. The discovery sent shockwaves through certain circles, for aluminum, as we know it, is a child of the modern age. While aluminum is abundant in the Earth's crust, it is tightly bonded with other elements in bauxite ore. To break those bonds and produce pure, workable aluminum requires a complex industrial process called electrolysis, which was not invented until the 1880s. The first significant aluminum smelting did not begin until the late 19th century. So how could a sophisticated aluminum alloy be found in a geological layer alongside creatures from the end of the last ice age? The implications are staggering. It suggests the possibility of a highly advanced, unknown culture with industrial metallurgical knowledge in deep prehistory, a civilization capable of creating an alloy that would not be rediscovered for over 11 millennia. This narrative has made the Aod wedge a flagship artifact for alternative history theories. However, mainstream science offers a very different, more grounded explanation. Skeptics point out that the original excavation was not conducted by professional archaeologists. The context was a construction site, and the stratigraphy, the layering of the earth, could have been disturbed. The most plausible theory is that the wedge is a piece of much more recent machinery, perhaps a tooth from a modern excavator bucket or a drill bit from a mining operation, that simply fell into an older layer during previous digging or natural shifting. Proponents of the wedge's antiquity counter with the official lab reports. They highlight a key detail, the presence of a thick 3mm layer of aluminum oxide crust covering the object. Aluminum oxidizes quickly, but forming a crust that thick, they argue, would require thousands of years of exposure, not just a few decades in the ground. Yet, geologists note that oxidation rates can vary wildly based on soil chemistry, moisture, and electrical activity. Acidic, mineral-rich soil could accelerate the process dramatically. The debate ultimately hinges on a single, unverifiable moment, the object's original position in the earth. Without meticulous archaeological documentation from the moment of discovery, we are left with two compelling but mutually exclusive stories. One tells of a forgotten chapter of human technological genius, a spark of advanced industry that flickered and died in the shadow of mastodons. The other tells a tale of a simple mix-up where a modern tool slipped into an ancient grave, creating an illusion of impossibility. The Aod wedge does not give us answers. Instead, it perfectly encapsulates the eternal struggle in understanding our past, the constant tension between a breathtaking anomaly and a mundane explanation, and the haunting question of which possibility we find more difficult to believe. Isolated in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, Easter Island is a place of profound silence and monumental questions. Its giant stone statues, the moai, have become icons of a mysterious collapse. But there is another, more intimate mystery carved into wood. Scattered in museums around the world are 24 surviving wooden tablets and staffs inscribed with thousands of finely etched glyphs. This is Rongorongo, the only indigenous writing system known to have developed in the entire Pacific. The symbols are beautiful and bizarre, a mix of stylized human figures, birds, fish, plants, and geometric shapes, arranged in a precise Boustrophedon pattern, meaning the lines alternate direction, like an ox plowing a field. To look at them is to see a language, a deliberate record, but one that speaks in a voice we can no longer hear. The tragedy of Rongorongo is not just its undeciphered state, but the brutal history of how it became silent. The script likely flourished in the 18th century, a unique cultural flowering on the world's most isolated inhabited island. Then, in the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders struck. They carried off roughly half the island's population, including, almost certainly, the last trained masters of Rongorongo, the scribes and priests who could read the chanting glyphs aloud. With them died the living key to the script. What remains are the tablets themselves and a few fragmentary, conflicting memories collected from elderly islanders decades later, who recalled that the texts were chanted during ceremonies but could not themselves read them. So what was written on these sacred boards? The theories reflect the core of Rapa Nui life. Were they genealogies tracing the divine lineage of chiefs back to the gods, a vital record in a society obsessed with ancestry and status? Could they be creation chants or religious hymns meant to be performed to ensure fertility and harmony? Given the islanders' incredible astronomical knowledge, evident in the precise orientations of some Moai platforms, many researchers believe the tablets could be sophisticated lunar calendars, tracking the cycles of the moon for agriculture and ritual. The truth is, Rongorongo is not one mystery, but the lock on a vault containing all the others. It holds the potential to explain the island's social structure, its spiritual beliefs, and perhaps even the story of its ecological and social unraveling from the perspective of the people who lived it. Modern efforts to decipher it combine high technology and deep linguistics. Scholars use spectral imaging to see faded markings, and computers analyze the statistical patterns of the glyphs, searching for the grammatical rules of a lost language. Yet, without a bilingual text or a living tradition, every breakthrough remains a hypothesis. The Rongorongo tablets are a haunting echo. They are the written soul of a culture that mastered stone and ocean, only to have its voice severed at the moment of contact. To decipher them would be to finally let the people of Easter Island tell their own story, in their own words, breaking a silence that has lasted for generations. While Easter Island's wooden tablets hold a silenced truth, a collection of stones from Peru shouts a story many wish were real. In the coastal city of Ica, starting in the 1960s, a local farmer named Basilio Ashuya began selling curious artifacts to tourists and collectors. They were andesite stones, river-smoothed rocks, but their surfaces were covered in intricate, deep-line engravings. The scenes depicted were nothing short of revolutionary. They showed humans battling and even riding what could only be described as dinosaurs, creatures like Triceratops and Stegosaurus. Other stones illustrated complex medical procedures, including what looked like heart transplants and cesarean sections performed with precise tools. There were maps of unknown continents and astronomers using telescopes to study the heavens. The farmer claimed he did not carve them himself, but that they were ancient relics discovered in a secret cave and left behind by a pre-Incan civilization with impossible knowledge. The narrative was a perfect storm for alternative history. Here was physical, tangible proof, carved in stone, that humans coexisted with dinosaurs, possessed advanced technology, and mapped a world far different from our own. It was a complete visual counter-narrative to mainstream science, and it spread like wildfire. The stones became icons championed by figures like Dr. Javier Cabrera, who amassed a collection of over 15,000 and built a private museum around them, arguing they were a library from a lost antediluvian culture. The appeal is visceral and powerful. It suggests everything we think we know about the deep past is wrong, replaced by a more exciting, more mysterious timeline where ancient humans were the masters of a forgotten world. Yet the scientific investigation into the Ica stones tells a very different and ultimately conclusive story. Geologists who examined them noted the carvings were stark white against the dark, patinated surface of the old stones. The engraved lines showed no signs of the weathering or mineral deposits that would accumulate over centuries. They were sharp, fresh, and modern. Even more damning was the iconography itself. The dinosaurs depicted were not the strange, speculative creatures of ancient art, but perfect copies of the dinosaur reconstructions found in mid-20th century children's books and popular science magazines. The Stegosaurus spines were arranged exactly as they were in a 1964 issue of a Life magazine encyclopedia series, a detail paleontologists themselves did not fully understand until later. The medical tools mirrored modern surgical equipment, not any known ancient implements. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Basilio Asciuglia eventually confessed. He admitted in interviews with journalists and archaeologists that he and other local farmers had carved the stones themselves using dental drills and hardened steel needles. They would age the fresh carvings with cow dung to give them an antique appearance. He explained it was a way to make a living selling curios to eager buyers who wanted a piece of the mysterious past. So why, despite this clear debunking, do the Ica stones retain such a powerful hold on the imagination? Their persistence is a testament to the human desire for paradigm-shattering evidence. They offer a simple, visual answer to big, unsettling questions. They neatly resolve the mystery of dinosaur extinction by placing humans alongside them. They soothe the anxiety of being a young species by suggesting we have a deep, glorious but erased history. In the world of cryptohistory, they are not seen as forgeries but as suppressed truths, their very debunking considered part of a cover-up by a rigid scientific establishment. The stones, therefore, are more than just rocks with pictures. They are a mirror reflecting our deep-seated need for the past to be more extraordinary, more connected to us, and more filled with lost grandeur than the slow, incremental story told by fossils and pottery shards. They represent the ultimate fantasy artifact, one that proves not what was, but what we desperately wish had been. The Ica stones offer a fantasy of coexistence, but the wolf's egg iron presented a mystery that felt equally impossible. Discovered in 1885 by a miner in Wolfsegg, Austria, this small, heavy object was pulled from a seam of tertiary coal, a geological layer formed millions of years before modern humans walked the earth. It was almost a perfect cube, roughly 2 inches on each side, with a deep groove circling its middle and sharp, well-defined edges. To the workmen who found it, and later to the public, it looked undeniably manufactured. Dubbed the Salzburg Cube, it was hailed as the ultimate out-of-place artifact, an iron tool or component from a time when only prehistoric animals roamed the planet. The implications were staggering, suggesting a lost industrial civilization in deep time or even visitors from beyond our world. For decades, it fueled speculation and was held up as proof that mainstream science was ignoring inconvenient evidence. The cube's journey from sensational mystery to explained wonder is a masterclass in how rigorous analysis can untangle even the most perplexing puzzles. As it passed into the hands of scientists, detailed examination began. The first clue was its material composition. Advanced metallurgical testing revealed it was not smelted iron, but a very specific alloy of iron and nickel with a crystalline structure known as a Widmanstetten pattern. This intricate cross-hatched pattern forms only under one condition, when an iron-nickel alloy cools over millions of years in the vacuum of space. It is the definitive fingerprint of an iron meteorite. The cube was not a cog from a primeval machine, it was a piece of a shattered asteroid. But what about its uncanny shape and that precise groove? Natural processes provided the answer. When the meteorite fragment plunged through the atmosphere, the intense heat melted its surface. As it tumbled, aerodynamic forces could have sculpted it into a roughly cuboid form. The groove could be a rigmaglypt, a thumbprint-like depression often etched into meteorites by vortices of scorching gas during atmospheric entry. Finally, once it lay buried in the coal bed, geological pressures and the slow, chemical action of percolating water could have further sharpened its edges and cleaned its faces, giving it that deceptively crafted appearance. The wolf's egg iron story is a vital counterpoint to tales of forgotten technology. It does not prove the existence of ancient engineers, but it reveals something equally profound about the natural world. Our planet is a museum of cosmic artifacts, and nature itself is a master sculptor, capable of producing forms so precise they mimic human design. This solved mystery teaches a crucial lesson. The most extraordinary explanations are not always the correct ones. Often, the truth requires us to look deeper, to understand the slow, patient, and incredibly powerful forces of geology and astronomy that can create wonders far stranger than any fiction. The natural world can forge objects that look like artifacts, but human hands can also forge documents that look like history. Among the most famous and controversial texts in the realm of ancient mysteries is the Tully Papyrus. It is important to state from the outset that this is not a physical relic you can see in a museum. No original papyrus exists. Instead, we have a story, a transcription of a translation, a document that exists only as a modern typewritten copy of what was allegedly seen on an ancient Egyptian scroll. The account it contains is extraordinary. It describes an event during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, around 1,480 years before the Common Era. The text states that in the sky there appeared circles of fire brighter than the sun, and that they moved in strange patterns before finally ascending higher and vanishing. To many, this is a clear, ancient record of a fleet of unidentified flying objects, a mass sighting from the age of the pyramids, and it is often presented as one of the oldest pieces of evidence for extraterrestrial visitation. The story of how this text came to light is a labyrinth of hearsay. It begins in the 1930s when an Italian Egyptologist named Alberto Tully reportedly saw an ancient papyrus for sale in a Cairo antique shop. The price was too high, so the story goes, and instead of buying it, Tully made a handwritten copy of the text. This copy was later lost. Then, Tully's brother allegedly transcribed that lost copy into typewritten form. This second-hand typewritten document was then given to a researcher named Prince Boris de Raschwilz, who published a translation. Every step in this chain is a point of potential failure. The original papyrus vanished, the first copy vanished, and all we are left with is a modern typescript of unknown fidelity. No reputable Egyptologist has ever examined the supposed original, and no other Egyptian text from any period describes a similar event. The text itself raises serious linguistic red flags. The language used in the translation does not match the formal, bureaucratic style of genuine Egyptian royal annals. Terms like circles of fire are not typical Egyptian phrasing for celestial phenomena, which they usually described in very specific religious terms tied to their gods. So why has this dubious text become such a cornerstone of ancient astronaut theory? Its power lies in its simplicity and its source. By attaching the event to a well-known pharaoh like Thutmose III and placing it in ancient Egypt, a civilization already shrouded in mystery for the public, it gains an air of legitimacy. It fits a desired narrative perfectly, a single, dramatic page from a lost history that seems to confirm a modern belief. The Tully Papyrus is not an archaeological mystery, it is a philological ghost. It highlights a different kind of relic altogether, one made not of stone or metal, but of story and desire. It shows how a compelling tale, once set loose without a physical artifact to anchor it, can take on a life of its own, transforming from an unverified anecdote into a key piece of evidence for a reality we wish to prove. The line between a cosmic artifact and a biological one is perhaps the most thrilling frontier of all. In 2013, a team of researchers led by a scientist named Chandra Wickramasinghe made an announcement that sent shockwaves through both the scientific community and the public. They claim to have found, within fragments of a meteorite that fell in Sri Lanka, something astonishing: microscopic fossilized algae. These tiny, circular structures, they argued, were the mineralized remains of diatoms, a type of aquatic algae. If true, this would be the first definitive proof of extraterrestrial life, not as bacteria or simple molecules, but as complex fossilized organisms. The implications were universe-altering. It would strongly support the theory of panspermia, the idea that life is common throughout the cosmos and can be seeded from one world to another by comets and asteroids riding the cosmic currents. For a moment, it seemed we might be holding in our hands a piece of a living alien ecosystem, preserved in stone from another star system. The reaction from the broader scientific community, however, was swift and overwhelmingly skeptical. Other experts in meteoritics and paleobiology scrutinized the paper and the evidence. They pointed to a fundamental and devastating flaw: contamination. The meteorite fragments had been collected from a freshwater reservoir. The specific types of diatoms identified in the study, critics argued, were a perfect match for common species of freshwater algae found right here on Earth in places like Sri Lanka. The process seemed clear. When the meteorite landed, it shattered and became saturated with local water. Earthly algae infiltrated its pores and cracks, and over time, those modern organisms became mineralized, creating the illusion of ancient extraterrestrial fossils. The debate that erupted was not just about one meteorite, it was about the gold standard of proof. Claiming you have found life from beyond Earth is perhaps the most extraordinary claim science can make. As the saying goes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. In this case, the evidence was deemed not only insufficient, but fatally compromised by a very ordinary explanation. This modern controversy highlights the immense difficulty of this search. How do you prove something is alien when Earth is teeming with life that can contaminate everything we touch? The criteria are brutally strict. Scientists look for isotopic ratios that are impossible in Earth biology, or for structures so strange they have no terrestrial counterpart. They demand samples collected in pristine, sterile conditions, like those directly from an asteroid by a spacecraft, not picked up from a muddy pond. The Sri Lanka meteorite case became a cautionary tale, a masterclass in how easily hope can outpace rigorous protocol. Yet, even in its rejection, the story holds a profound fascination. It shows that the hunger to answer the ultimate question, "Are we alone?" is so powerful it can make us see familiar algae as messengers from the stars. The real relic here is not the contested fossil, but the ongoing, painstaking process of science itself, sifting through the noise of our own world, listening for a whisper from the void that is unmistakably, undeniably not of this Earth. From the cosmic search for alien life, we descend back into the soil of our own world, where a different kind of perfect form confounds us. Scattered from Britain to Hungary, buried in fields and unearthed from old villa foundations are the Roman dodecahedra. These are not grand statues or intricate machines, but small, hollow objects you could hold in your hand, cast in bronze with exquisite care. Each one is a geometric wonder, a 12-sided polyhedron, every face a pentagon with a perfectly round hole in its center. The holes are all different sizes. At each of the 20 corners sits a small, spherical knob. They are beautiful, precise, and completely baffling. Over 100 of them have been found across the breadth of the former Roman Empire, yet not a single scroll, inscription, or mosaic ever mentions them. They are ghosts in the archaeological record, physical objects that refuse to give up their purpose. The theories proposed over the years are a testament to human ingenuity and sometimes to our desperation. The most common guess is a practical one. Perhaps they were candlestick holders. You could insert a taper of varying thickness into the different holes, and the wax would drip neatly into the hollow interior. But why make such a complex, expensive bronze object for such a simple task, when a simple clay or iron spike would do? Others saw them as dice for an elaborate game of chance, but they are not numbered, and their weight makes them roll awkwardly. Could they have been tools? One persistent idea casts them as knitting gauges for creating fingers on gloves. You would wrap yarn around the knobs and weave through the holes. Yet nowhere patterns on the knobs support this, and no surviving Roman gloves have been found that would match such a device. The theories then venture into the realm of specialized knowledge. Were they surveying instruments? If you planted a staff in the ground and looked through the different holes, you could perhaps calculate distances or angles for land division. But why the 12 sides and the knobs? A simpler tool would be more efficient. Some have suggested they were religious or ritual objects used for divination, with the holes representing celestial bodies or fateful paths. They are often found in military contexts, leading to speculation they were used to calculate the trajectory of projectiles for siege weapons. Each theory fits some of the evidence, but none fits all of it perfectly. The lack of any writing about them is the most deafening silence. The Romans were meticulous record keepers, from military supply lists to satirical poems. If these were common tools or sacred objects, why did no one think to write them down? This is the true charm of the dodecahedra. They are not threatening mysteries that rewrite history. They are intimate, personal puzzles. They represent a slice of daily Roman life, a technology or a tradition so commonplace to its users that it never occurred to them to explain it. It was simply a thing you used, and now, centuries later, we hold this beautifully crafted, geometrically perfect thing in our hands, turning it over and over, trying to see the world through the eyes of a Roman soldier, a merchant, or a craftsperson. We stare into its array of circular holes, each a different size, like a series of lenses focusing on a lost moment. The answer is not grand or cosmic. It is probably wonderfully mundane, a solution to a problem we no longer have, a key to a lock we cannot even see. The dodecahedra remind us that history is not just made of kings and battles, but of countless quiet, clever inventions whose instructions have been forever lost to time, leaving behind only a silent bronze question. High in the Andes, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman guards the old Inca capital of Cusco with walls that defy belief. These are not simple stacked stones. They are a colossal three-dimensional puzzle built from enormous blocks of diorite and andesite, some weighing over 100 tons. Each stone is a unique, irregular polygon, with anywhere from 6 to a dozen sides, yet they lock together with a precision that seems to mock the very idea of gravity. The joints are so tight, so seamlessly fitted, that for centuries people have said you cannot slip a razor blade or even a piece of paper between them. This is not an exaggeration born of wonder. Modern engineers and masons who visit confirm it, running their hands over seams that have withstood earthquakes for 500 years and finding no gap, no crack, no point of weakness. The strangeness is not just the scale, but the technique. How do you achieve such perfection with stone? The Incas had no iron, no steel, no wheels, and no draft animals larger than the llama. According to mainstream archaeology, the method was one of unimaginable patience and communal effort. Quarrymen would use harder stones to pound along natural fracture lines in the bedrock, gradually isolating a block. Teams of hundreds, perhaps thousands, would then lever it onto log rollers and haul it along earthen ramps using ropes made of leather and plant fiber. The fitting is the true marvel. The leading theory is a process of trial and error called cut and try. A stone would be roughly shaped at the quarry, moved into approximate position, and then the real work began. Craftsmen would use handheld pounding stones to slowly, incrementally, nap the edges of the block, testing the fit against its neighbor over and over. They might use sand as an abrasive to refine the surface. This was not a quick process. It could have taken months to perfect the fit of a single stone in the zigzagging walls. The result was a form of ashlar masonry so precise it acted as its own anti-seismic system, the interlocking stones able to shift and settle during tremors without collapsing. Yet the sheer perfection of Sacsayhuaman has fueled alternative theories for generations. Could the Incas have possessed a lost knowledge, a way to soften the stone itself? Some point to local plants with high oxalic acid content, suggesting a chemical paste might have been applied to make the rock temporarily malleable like clay, allowing workers to mold the joints. Others, inspired by folklore, speculate about the use of sound or vibration, a resonant frequency that could make the massive stones somehow lighter or easier to shape, a technology now forgotten. These ideas speak to our modern difficulty in reconciling the artifact with the tools we know were available. The walls seem to demand a more advanced, more elegant solution than endless pounding. Perhaps the most compelling perspective comes from looking at the Inca worldview. For them, stone was not dead material. It was alive, a sacred embodiment of the Earth Mother, Pachamama. The act of building was a spiritual dialogue. The perfect fit was not just an engineering goal, it was a ritual necessity, a symbolic joining that created harmony and strength. This cultural context transforms the mystery. The patience required was not a burden, but a devotional act. The anonymous masons were not just laborers, they were priests of geometry, coaxing the living rock to embrace its neighbor. When you stand before those walls, you are not just looking at a fortress, you are witnessing a philosophy made solid, a belief that precision and patience could create something eternal. The stones of Sacsayhuaman hold their silence, but they whisper a question that lingers in the thin Andean air. Are we underestimating the power of human dedication, or is there a whisper of a different kind of knowledge, one that understood the soul of stone in a way we have long forgotten? Sonar images from the cold depths of the Baltic Sea ignited a firestorm of speculation in 2011. A team of Swedish treasure hunters using side-scan sonar discovered a strange, circular formation resting on the seafloor nearly 300 feet below the surface. The object was massive, roughly 200 feet in diameter, and its shape was uncanny. With a central, disc-like body and a long, trailing ridge, it bore a startling resemblance to the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, a spaceship frozen in the murky darkness. The immediate reaction was a frenzy of theories. Was this the ultimate proof, a crashed, unidentified flying object lying forgotten on the ocean floor? Others suggested a secret Nazi weapon from World War II, a lost anti-submarine device or experimental craft. The location added to the intrigue, lying in a region crisscrossed by wartime naval routes. The initial sonar images were compelling, showing sharp edges and geometric forms that seemed utterly unnatural against the soft contours of the seabed. This was a modern mystery unfolding in real time, fueled by the internet and the human love for a good, unexplained image. Expeditions were funded and divers descended to get a closer look. What they found was both clarifying and deeply puzzling. The object was not a metal spacecraft, it was a rock, a colossal glacial erratic, a boulder transported and deposited by an ancient ice sheet thousands of years ago. Its composition was primarily basalt, a common volcanic stone. This should have solved the mystery, but instead it deepened it. The divers reported bizarre phenomena. Their electronic equipment, including satellite phones and sonar devices, would malfunction when directly above the anomaly, only to return to normal when they moved away. They brought up samples that some claimed were metals not native to the region. The most striking feature was the object itself, which on closer inspection appeared to have stair-like structures, straight edges, and right angles, features that seemed incredibly difficult to attribute to natural geological processes alone. So what are we left with? Mainstream geologists have a clear explanation. They point to the power of glacial movement. As a glacier advances, it can pluck enormous boulders from bedrock and carry them for hundreds of miles. When the ice retreats, these erratics are dropped, often in isolated, puzzling locations. The unusual shape could be the result of successive glacial flows carving and fracturing the rock in unusual ways. The reported malfunctions could be due to the high metal content in the basalt interfering with instruments, or simply the power of suggestion in a high-stress, low-visibility environment. Yet the perfectly circular outline and those persistent right angles continue to nag at the imagination. The Baltic Sea anomaly represents a new kind of relic mystery, one born in the digital age. It is a story about how a single piece of data, a sonar ping transformed into an image, can detach from its scientific context and become a canvas for our deepest curiosities. It lives in a space between a solved geological case and an enduring cultural legend, a reminder that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are not about what we find, but about what we desperately hope to find in the blurry shadows just beyond the light. The cold depths of the Baltic Sea leave us with a blurry image, but in the sun-baked rock of South Africa, the mystery is solid, metallic, and held in the palm of your hand. Deep within mines extracting the mineral pyrite, workers have for decades been pulling strange objects from the rock. They are small spheres, most no larger than a walnut, and they are made of a bluish metallic substance. Their most striking feature is not their material but their form. Many have 1, 2, or 3 perfectly parallel grooves etched around their equator as if lathed by a machine. Some even show a fine, hair-like seam running along that groove. These are the Klerksdorp spheres, named for the museum in South Africa where many reside. They are not found in loose soil, but embedded deep within Precambrian rock formations, layers geologists date to an almost incomprehensible 2.8 billion years old. To put that age in perspective, this is a time before multicellular life, before even the simplest algae. The Earth was a toxic, volcanic world, its atmosphere devoid of breathable oxygen. The immediate, visceral reaction upon seeing one is disbelief. They look engineered. The grooves are too straight, too parallel, too deliberate. This has led to a breathtaking proposal. Could these spheres be artifacts manufactured by an intelligent, non-human civilization that flourished on our planet in the deep, dark past, only to vanish without a trace, leaving behind these metallic marbles as their sole legacy? It is a narrative that speaks to our deepest fascinations with lost worlds and forgotten creators. The scientific explanation, however, requires us to look closer at the incredible artistry of geology itself. Mainstream mineralogy identifies the spheres as natural concretions of pyrite, also known as fool's gold. Pyrite often forms in spherical nodules as it crystallizes from mineral-rich solutions within sedimentary rock. The grooves, far from being machine-tooled, are likely the result of a common geological process. As the concretion grew layer by layer, the surrounding rock, which has a different composition and hardness, pressed against it. Over eons, this constant pressure can impress lines or ridges onto the sphere's surface. The famous equatorial grooves could be where the sphere was pinched between two harder layers of rock. Furthermore, when these spheres weather and erode, the outer layers of pyrite can oxidize and flake away, sometimes revealing an inner structure of radiating crystals that can create the illusion of a seam. What we are seeing, then, is not a manufactured object, but a snapshot of a billion-year-long conversation between chemistry, pressure, and time. The Klerksdorp spheres are a powerful case study in a fundamental human tendency called pareidolia, our brain's instinct to see familiar patterns, especially faces and intentional design, in random shapes. We see a grooved sphere and our mind, wired by a world of human tools and technology, immediately shouts, "Someone made this." It is the same impulse that makes us see a face in the moon or a castle in a cloud. These spheres force us to confront a thrilling but difficult truth. Nature is a master craftsman, capable of producing symmetry and complexity that rivals our own workshops. The real wonder may not be that an ancient civilization could create such a thing, but that our planet, through nothing but blind, physical processes, already did 2.8 billion years before the first human ever wondered about its origins. They are a humbling reminder that the universe does not need a designer to create objects of stunning, deceptive perfection. A deceptive perfection in stone gives way to a deception in metal, one that nearly rewrote the sacred history of Spain. In the 1590s, in the hills of Sacremont outside Granada, workers made a discovery that would ignite a firestorm. Buried in caves and sealed with ancient-looking mortar, they found a collection of small, circular lead books bound with lead wire. Their surfaces were covered in dense, mysterious characters, a script that looked ancient and exotic, but the content, once translated by local scholars, was earth-shattering. The text claimed to be the lost writings of early Christian martyrs from the 1st century, including the disciples themselves, prophesying the coming of Islam and declaring that Arabic was a holy language. For a Spain that had just completed the Reconquista, forcibly converting or expelling its Muslim and Jewish populations, this was a theological bombshell. Here was apparent divine sanction for the culture they had tried to erase, suggesting a hidden unity between Christianity and Islam that traced back to the very dawn of the faith. To the Moriscos, the converted Muslims living under intense suspicion and pressure, the lead books were a miraculous vindication, a sign from God that their heritage was not heretical but part of a grand divine plan. They became objects of fervent devotion overnight. The Church, however, was immediately and deeply suspicious. The Vatican sent investigators, and a bitter battle ensued between local believers who saw a divine discovery and the central authorities who smelled a dangerous fraud. The controversy raged for decades, a clash of faith, politics, and identity. The Church experts dissected the books with a critical eye. They noted the script, while strange, had odd anachronisms. The language mixed Arabic, Latin, and invented words in a way no 1st century text would. The lead itself, while corroded, did not show the specific patina expected from nearly 16 centuries in the ground. Most damningly, the theological content was a little too convenient, too perfectly tailored to the contemporary struggles of the Moriscos, advocating for tolerance and validating their place in Spanish society. In the end, after years of debate, the Pope declared the lead books to be clever forgeries. They were seized, locked away, and largely forgotten by official history. But the mystery was not simply solved. The question remained: who created them, and why with such elaborate care? Modern historians, looking back with less doctrinal pressure, see a far more nuanced and tragic story. The most compelling theory is that the lead books were not a crude hoax for profit, but a desperate, ingenious act of cultural preservation and protest by the Morisco community. Facing forced conversion, cultural annihilation, and the Inquisition's watchful eye, a group of Morisco intellectuals and perhaps sympathetic Christian allies may have crafted these relics. They were a secret history written in code and buried in the earth, meant to be discovered. Their goal was not to deceive for greed, but to survive. By creating a seemingly ancient Christian text that honored Arabic and predicted Islam, they were attempting to build a theological bridge, a safe space for their identity within the hostile new world of Catholic Spain. They were planting evidence for a more tolerant past, hoping it would grow into a more tolerant future. The lead books of Sacremont, therefore, are more than forgeries. They are a poignant relic of a people fighting for their soul with the only tools left to them, lead plates and a brilliant, desperate fiction. They represent history written not by the victors, but by the vanquished, etched in metal and hidden in a cave, a silent, powerful shout into the void of forced forgetting. A masterpiece can be stolen, but the empty space it leaves behind becomes a relic all its own. In the serene setting of St. Bavo's Cathedral in Ghent, Belgium, the Adoration of the Mystic Lamb altarpiece by Jan van Eyck is a pinnacle of Renaissance art. Yet, one of its lower panels tells a different story, a story of audacious theft and enduring silence. This panel, known as the Just Judges, was ripped from its hinges in the night of April 10, 1934. In its place, the thieves left a note. It was not a simple demand for money, but a cryptic, taunting message, a single line that read, taken from Germany by the Treaty of Versailles. This was no ordinary art theft. It was an act charged with political grievance, pointing a finger at the post-World War I treaty that had humiliated Germany. The mystery had begun with a statement, and it would only grow more convoluted. The cathedral and police faced a dilemma. To hide the embarrassing security breach, they secretly commissioned a talented art restorer named Jeff van der Vecken to paint a replacement copy. For a year, the public and even most officials believed the altarpiece was whole, while a forgery was quietly installed. This act of secrecy, this decision to cover up the crime, would haunt the investigation for decades, creating a fog of official deception from the very start. Then the ransom notes began to arrive. They were addressed to the Bishop of Ghent, and they were elaborate, filled with bizarre conditions and a demand for 1 million Belgian francs. The correspondence was signed with a triangle, a circle, and the letters DOD, a cryptic signature that meant nothing to the authorities. The communication led to a series of strange, clandestine meetings in Brussels parks, where a go-between for the bishop would be given instructions but never shown the actual painting. The trail seemed to lead everywhere and nowhere. The most flamboyant suspect was a man named Arsène Godetier, a stockbroker and respected church warden from the town of Wetteren. On his deathbed in November 1934, he confessed to his lawyer that he alone knew where the judge's panel was hidden. "I am the only one who knows where the mystic lamb is," he whispered. "The secret rests with me," but then he died, taking the location to his grave. Was he the mastermind or merely a pawn in a larger game? Investigators found drafts of the ransom notes in his office, but no painting. His involvement seemed certain, yet his motive remained opaque. Was it greed, political ideology, or the thrill of the game? The plot thickened with theories of high-level involvement. Some researchers believe Godetier was acting on behalf of, or was being manipulated by, a charismatic Belgian aristocrat and Nazi sympathizer named Leopold Vindictive 200. This alias belonged to a man deeply enmeshed in the far-right political underworld of the 1930s. The theory suggests the theft was not about money, but about leveraging a national treasure for political power, perhaps to fund extremist activities or to create a crisis that could be exploited. Even more startling are persistent rumors that the stolen panel found its way into the private collection of a high-ranking Belgian minister, or was hidden away by the state itself to avoid scandal, a secret too dangerous to ever recover. For nearly a century, the original Just Judges panel has remained vanished. Every few years, a new theory emerges, a new basement is searched, a new code is purported to be cracked. The case is a perfect storm, blending high art with low crime, political intrigue with personal obsession, and a deathbed confession that solved nothing. The empty space in the Ghent altarpiece, now filled by a skilled copy, is more than a missing piece of wood and paint. It is a physical void that holds a complete, unsolved novel within its frame. It asks us what we value more, the beautiful object itself, or the endlessly captivating mystery of its disappearance. A deep hole on a windswept island has swallowed millions of dollars and consumed entire lifetimes. Off the coast of Nova Scotia lies Oak Island, home to the most famous, expensive, and utterly unresolved treasure hunt in history. It began in 1795 when a teenager named Daniel Maginnis noticed a peculiar depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree, its branches showing signs of being used as a pulley. He and two friends started to dig, and what they uncovered was no simple hole. Just a few feet down, they hit a layer of flagstones not native to the island. 10 feet further, they found a platform of solid oak logs. At 20 and 30 feet, they found more oak platforms. This was no natural formation. Someone had gone to extraordinary, back-breaking lengths to bury something very deep and to mark the spot in a way that was meant to be rediscovered. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. At around 90 feet, according to the legend, their shovel struck something that sounded like wood. They believed it was a treasure chest. Exhausted, they stopped for the night, planning to retrieve it in the morning. When they returned, the pit was flooded with 60 feet of seawater, and every attempt to bail it out failed. This was the first encounter with the pit's infamous engineering, a series of cleverly designed flood tunnels allegedly dug from the nearby beach that would automatically fill any deep excavation with ocean water. It was a booby trap on a monumental scale. This single flooding shaft, now called the Money Pit, launched over 2 centuries of obsession. The clues pulled from its muddy depths are a maddening collection of maybes. Early excavators reportedly found layers of charcoal, putty, and coconut fiber, a material not found anywhere near Canada, hinting at a tropical origin. In 1803, a stone slab was pulled up, inscribed with a cryptic cipher that, when decoded by a later searcher, was said to read, "40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried." Then, in 1849, a drill probe brought up 3 links of a gold chain from deep below. Later, a tiny, torn piece of parchment with the letters Roman 6 or Rye written in India ink was retrieved on a drill bit. Each fragment was a siren's call, promising that the next dig, the next investment, the next technological innovation would finally reveal the secret. And so the theories grew, each more grand than the last. Was this the hidden vault of Captain Kidd or Blackbeard? Could it be the lost treasury of the Knights Templar, who supposedly fled to the New World with holy relics? The wildest idea suggests it holds the original manuscripts of William Shakespeare, proof that the bard was someone else entirely. The modern era has seen the hunt escalate into a corporate venture, featured in a long-running television series. Armed with sonar, caissons, and massive excavators, the current team has found compelling, yet still inconclusive, evidence. They've uncovered Spanish coins from the 1700s, a medieval cross, and wood dating to the 1600s. They've identified the flood tunnel system as real, but the central chamber, the legendary treasure vault, remains elusive. The true relic of Oak Island is not a chest of gold, but the pit itself and the human psychology it exposes. It represents the ultimate cliffhanger, a story that refuses to end. Every artifact is a plot twist, every failure a reason to try again. It has bankrupted wealthy men and driven others to madness, all for the chance to solve a puzzle that may have no final prize. The Money Pit asks a question far more profound than what is buried there. It asks why we are willing to spend everything we have, not for a guaranteed reward, but for the irresistible, agonizing thrill of the search, for the chance to be the one who finally turns the last page of a mystery written in soil and seawater. The silent, waiting tomb of the first emperor of China is perhaps the ultimate unopened door. For over 2,000 years, it has lain beneath a man-made mountain of earth in central China, a secret kept by the very soil. While the world marvels at the thousands of terracotta warriors discovered in the surrounding pits, these life-sized soldiers are merely the outer guard, the sentinels posted in the courtyard. The emperor's burial chamber itself, the heart of the complex, remains untouched and unexcavated. Ancient historians like Sima Qian wrote vivid accounts of its construction, describing a subterranean palace that mirrored the emperor's realm. The ceiling was inlaid with pearls to simulate the night sky, and the floor was molded into a map of his kingdom, complete with flowing rivers of shimmering, toxic mercury. This was not just a tomb, it was a microcosm of the universe, created to house the emperor's spirit for eternity. For centuries, these descriptions were dismissed as poetic legend. Then, modern science intervened. Geochemical surveys of the mound have repeatedly detected abnormally high concentrations of mercury in the soil, readings so significant they align eerily with the ancient texts. It seems the legend of the Mercury rivers may be a literal truth. So with such a monumental discovery waiting, why does no one simply dig? The reasons are a powerful blend of profound respect and sobering practicality. First, there is the matter of preservation. The terracotta army was once brightly painted, but exposure to air caused the pigments to flake and vanish within minutes. The contents of the main tomb, potentially including silks, lacquers, wooden artifacts, and even organic remains, would be infinitely more delicate. current technology offers no way to retrieve such treasures without catastrophic loss. To open the tomb now would be an act of destruction, not discovery. Then there are the legendary booby traps. Sima Qian wrote of crossbows rigged to fire automatically at intruders. While the mechanisms would likely have decayed, the threat of structural collapse is very real. The tomb's interior, undisturbed for millennia, exists in a fragile equilibrium. Breaking the seal could cause immediate flooding or the sudden collapse of chambers, crushing everything inside. But beyond the technical hurdles lies a deeper ethical consideration. In China, there is a strong cultural tradition of respecting the sanctity of ancestral tombs. The first emperor, for all his tyranny, is a foundational figure in Chinese history and identity. There is a palpable sense that some secrets are meant to stay buried, that the peace of the dead, especially an emperor who unified the nation, should not be lightly disturbed. This creates a fascinating tension. The tomb is a guaranteed treasure trove, a time capsule from the dawn of imperial China that could rewrite our understanding of art, technology, and power. It might contain the lost library of the Qin dynasty or artifacts of unimaginable splendor. Yet it is also a sacred grave, so the world waits. Archaeologists monitor the mound with non-invasive tools, mapping its structure with magnetic and gravitational sensors, slowly building a ghostly image of the palace within. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang thus becomes the greatest relic of all, not for what it shows us, but for what it withholds. It is the archaeological cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers, a sealed book whose first page we have not yet earned the right to turn. It teaches a final, humbling lesson that sometimes the greatest act of preservation is patience, and the ultimate respect for history is knowing when to walk away, leaving the mystery intact for a future that may finally be ready to understand it. From ancient computers to cursed manuscripts and lost tombs, these 35 relics are more than museum pieces. They are fragments of a conversation we are still trying to understand, a dialogue between our present and a past that refuses to be silent. Each object, whether a mysterious gear, an unreadable page, or a silent stone sphere, serves as a puncture in the smooth fabric of history. Through these holes, we catch glimpses of a world far more complex, more ingenious, and more mysterious than any textbook summary could ever contain. They challenge the comfortable assumption that human progress is a straight, predictable line. Instead, they reveal a story of sparks, moments of brilliance that flare in the darkness, are forgotten for centuries, and then are found again, leaving us to wonder what else has been lost in the long night between them. These artifacts prove that the past is not a dry list of facts, but a living, breathing mystery, stranger and more compelling than any fiction we could invent. So now, the most important question passes to you. Which of these strange stories resonated most deeply? Was it the lonely genius of the Antikythera mechanism, the silent scream of the Voynich manuscript, or the patient, perfect stones of Sacsayhuaman? Do you believe we have already found the answers to these puzzles, or do you think the truest explanations are still out there, waiting in an undiscovered cave, a forgotten manuscript, or a tomb we dare not open? The search is what makes history alive. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which relic captured your imagination. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of our past, be sure to subscribe. We have many more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas waiting for you. Thank you for watching, and remember, the most exciting chapters of our story are often the ones we have yet to read. Keep questioning.